Hey guys, Ken from Ft86SpeedFactory. We got the black BRZ up in the air because we're going to be installing some RCE springs. This is going to give us a 20mm drop all around, as well as some stiffer spring rates for those back roads, autocrosses, or track days. Now there's actually two different versions for you to choose from available on our website. One is the RCE Yellows, which have a 4.5K spring rate, and the Tarmacs, which have a 5K spring rate. So it's really up to you guys to decide which spring rate is going to be best for you. The yellows seem to be a very popular option for this car, so be sure to check that out. Now let's get started on this car, get those springs installed. Alright, so obviously the first thing you want to do is get your car up in the air and get the wheels off, which I already have done. Once the wheels are off, you're going to remove the clips that are holding this ABS line onto the shock, and also the 12mm bolt that's holding the brake line in place. Once those are removed, you can move on to these two 19mm bolts that are holding the knuckle to the shock. You're also going to need a 17mm open-ended wrench and a 6mm Allen key to get the end link off. Once you have the bolts, end link, and brake lines out of the way, down on the bottom, you can move up top here and remove these three 12mm bolts, and you should be able to drop down the shock. There we go. Once we have the shocks out in the front, we can move on to the rear, where it's a little bit different. We need to remove these two bolts right here holding in the shock and the end link. This is going to be a 17mm bolt and a 14mm bolt. Once you have the bolts on the bottom removed, we can go up to the trunk, remove your trunk carpet, and you're going to be looking on either side for two 14mm bolts that are holding in your shocks. Go ahead and remove those. Once the bolts up top are removed, you can pull down on this assembly here to sneak the shock out. Now that we have these shocks off, obviously you're going to have four. I only have two right now, one front and one rear. You're going to need spring compressors on the front. Don't really need them on the rear, just be careful when you're removing that center nut. You also need to remove this cap right here to expose the center nut on the front. Now there's a couple different ways to remove that nut depending on what tools you have. You just want to make sure you're not spinning that center shaft too much, so just get those off however you can. Now that the stock springs are removed, you're going to install your new springs along with the bump stops and the new dust boot in the rear, and then you should be able to press the purchase back on and the top hats. You're going to make sure the spring is seated correctly, and then we can get these reinstalled on the car. For the rears, you want to make sure that the orientation is correct, since once you tighten it down, you're not going to be able to move the top. So just make sure it lines up correctly so that it can go back into its place. Once you get your new springs installed on your shocks, you can reinstall everything on the car and go grab an alignment, since we did mess with some suspension parts. Now I'm going to put all the torque information down below in the description, so be sure to check that out so you know what to torque everything down to. Let us know in the comment section down below what else you want to see on the black BRZ. If you want to grab a set of these springs for yourself, go and click on the top right hand corner of the video. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to email us, sales@ft86speedfactory.com. or give us a ring, 888-885-2002. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on your FRS or BRZ.